Hey friends, Jill and Nathan here. Welcome back to Whispering Willow Farm. We are inside on this hot day, and we are kind of in this season where we've been preserving a ton of the summer harvest, but we're also really being intentional with what we're planting for the fall and the winter, and already thinking through preservation, which is something I talked to you guys about earlier this week in a vlog. Is it's not only what are you going to start, it's knowing how you're going to preserve that, how you're going to prepare that later and cook it, really just so you're not wasting anything on your farm. So Nathan and I are already kind of talking through our top preservation I guess ways of preserving for the fall and the winter. And so I thought this would be a great video to just show you guys what our top preservation tools are, our most used preservation tools. And I would say it probably varies for the both of us, because you're probably using more tools or different tools than I am, I would say, for preserving.
Maybe, but not necessarily. I mean, besides the freeze dryer weighs 300 pounds, I couldn't bring it in here.
So Nathan is primarily preserving using the freeze dryer. So I'm going to let you talk about that for a little bit, why you love it, why it's one of your most used tools for preservation.
Yeah, so the simple fact that it stores, when you freeze dry something correctly, it stores for a long time. That has been kind of the tricky thing, is figuring out how to freeze dry it and how to get all that moisture content out properly.
Yeah.
Because I've failed a couple times, or not dried it long enough, and so after a week or two it actually grew mold because it still had moisture content. So just figuring that out. But that's probably my favorite, just because I know that's going to last a long time. However, we do grow things, and we grow enough to last us essentially a year. That's our goal, especially with this fall garden, is we will produce a majority of our food for preservation this fall garden. Yeah, so
I love it. It's my favorite time. So Nathan does the freeze dryer. It is obviously going to be the highest price point of anything I'm showing you guys today. It is an investment, and I would say it's probably one of the top investments for your homestead or small farm, as far as like preservation. And so there are different sizes. You can buy like this, a small, a medium, a large. Those vary in price ranges, but those are definitely something to be thinking through. If your goal is just to have enough food to last you for this month or the next month, or maybe even a few months, that might not be the best option. But if you want to put up a large amount and you want it to last for years and years, then is definitely a contender and should be something you think about. And there's just so many cool options you can do. For us, it's not even about the long-term preservation. It's just how we prefer to eat a lot of our snacks, because it holds that nutrient content a lot better than if you were to dehydrate it out. So a lot of our fruits and vegetables we're just dehydrating as a snack. Probably one of my most used tools for preservation would be canning. I am in the kitchen a lot this time of year, less in the fall and the winter, and that's all just dependent on the crops that I'm growing. But this time of year I'm growing a lot of pickles and cucumbers. I'm growing a lot of tomatoes, and what we're doing with that is we're canning them. And so we've got our Weck canning jars, which I do most of my ferments in them. I absolutely just love them. They're a bit more expensive than just your traditional canning jars, and I would say that if you're putting up like quarts and quarts of tomato sauce, this is not going to be the sustainable way to go, because the price point's too expensive. But I do like to have a couple of various different sizes for ferments that I can ferment on the counter for a few days, put them in the fridge until we're eating them. This brand is Weck. Everything that we're going to mention today, I'm going to find a link for and put it in the description so you can check it out. But we are using primarily ball, wide mouth mason jars, quart and pint. Now, if you've been, really, I don't think it matters where you live at, supply issues have been an issue. And so we have had a hard time finding the wide mouth mason jars. And so I try to snag them anytime I can, but I've actually already used all my wide mouth quarts for various different things that I've canned. So now I just have the narrow mouth, and really totally a preference thing. It doesn't matter. For me, it's a scooping ability. And when we have like salsa or whatever, I just want to be able to pull that jar from the fridge, take my chip, dip it in there.
I like to stick my fingers in, and I can't get my fingers in.
Yes, he likes to stick his fingers in here. So we buy ball, and that's primarily just because that's what we have available to us. There are a lot of different brands out there you could use, but it's what I've used for years. It's what my papa used, and so that's just what we do. But I am canning, I would say, a good bit. One thing you want to think about too, and this is where Nathan and I really, try to figure out that cost analysis is, this is a very expensive way to preserve your food when you think about the cost of jars. And the cost of jars are steadily increasing. Now, you can find jars at, thrift stores, flea markets, yard sales, and you can just buy new lids and they'll still fine. But still that takes your time going to hunt these things down and trying to find them. And I know that I've put you on the task of trying to find mason jars, and you've had a difficult time.
I have. Sporadically, they're on Amazon. You can buy them on Walmart.com, I think. But
usually where I find the best deals are at the end of the season. If you go to your Kroger, for us, we live in Arkansas, I can go to Kroger and they'll have these like discounted. It's just like the last of the inventory that's left, and I usually just snag all that I can, and it will usually be enough to get me by for a while, because I'm primarily only canning in the summertime. We kind of switch preservation methods in the fall and the winter, but just make sure you're stocking the aisles, the canning aisles of Walmart, Kroger, any sort of small grocery store like that. All right, so with canning, there are some things that just make your job a bit easier. These have also been a bit harder to come by. I've had some of these for years, and they're just these canning kits, and it comes with a funnel, which I find is essential. It comes with this like jar grabber. I'm sure that's not the technical word. Coated tongs. This is also a game changer. And then there's a few things in there that if you're it's cheaper to buy the kit than to buy it all individually, but there's like this magnetic stick that you can stick down and pick up the lids, which is really nice. There is something to like get all the air bubbles out. That's nice. So just having these kits, they're so inexpensive that they do make the job easier. And I was actually doing it without a lot of these things. I had the tongs and that was it. And Nathan would see me working in the kitchen all day, and he was like, Jill, we gotta work smarter, not harder. And so he bought me this kit, and it has been something that I've used almost everything in this kit every single time I've canned.
Well, this is, I think, our third kit. What happens is the kids get a hold of these, and then we can't ever find them. So that's
true. So that's really all when it comes to canning. Now you do have what you're gonna can in, and there are a few different methods. There's a water bath canner, and then you have a pressure canner. And we actually have the pressure canner. Look at this bad boy. What is the brand of this? Presto. These are a bit costly. Nathan bought that for me for a birthday present one year, I think. And I know a lot of people get intimidated by the pressure canner, but one, it's gonna can everything way quicker than water bath canning. It's gonna last longer, and there are just so many things when it comes to water bath canning that have been controversial that I've kind of steered clear of doing a lot of preserving using that method. What are you gonna say? No,
and I think, the pressure canners back in the day, were pretty dangerous, and these are fairly safe. So
I vividly remember the first time I ever used the pressure canner. I was canning green beans. I was on the phone with my friend, and I was on the phone with her for 3.5 hours because I was so terrified. It's a pressure canner. I thought, I'm gonna blow my house up. That's what's gonna happen. I'm gonna blow my house up. I have no idea what I'm doing. And she stayed on the phone with me for 3.5 hours and walked me through the entire process. Bless her soul. Now there are wonderful preserving cookbooks. There's even the pressure canner cookbook, which I reference a lot, and it'll tell you for pints, for quarts. One thing that I didn't, you can even, these weights, we lose these a lot. You can buy replacement weights. That's also crucial. But I would say if you had the option between water bath canning and pressure canning, once you get the hang of pressure canning, I think it's way easier, and it does just take so much time away from you spending in the kitchen. So when I'm canning personally, that's my preferred method. I know you've canned a few times on your own. You've always used the pressure canner. Do you have any experience using the water bath canner?
I have, but once we got our hands on one of these, it's a
game changer.
Game changer.
Yeah.
So
for me, I do the bulk of the preserving. but Nathan does the bulk of the taste testing. So
obviously,
it really does take a team. Then we have the NutriChef. This is a vacuum sealer. I will say we don't use this near as often as we used to. When we lived on our old farm and we were really kind of scaling our operation, I felt like you used this often, but you did run into a few obstacles. One, it's a really cheap price point. It's probably the cheapest of all of these, you know, even probably cheaper than the pressure canner. But there were a few things you didn't like about it.
Yeah, so basically, you know, when we get into green beans, things like that, we'll use it. Broccoli, cauliflower, you know, we'll use it. But it was when we were harvesting our rabbits, is when I'd primarily use that, you know. And the negative thing, so if you buy a good one, it doesn't overheat as quickly. And so, you know, when I'm getting ready to preserve and use this, I typically have everything ready so I can throw my meat, my veggies, whatever in and just seal. You know, seal after seal after seal. And what happens with the cheaper ones is they overheat quickly, so you have to give it 5-10 minutes to cool off before you do it again. So that's the only thing is if you spend a couple $100 and get a good one, you don't have to worry about that. So.
And if you're looking at like just an affordable, cheap option, and you're just bringing in like a basket or two at a time, I think this is great. When we're yielding 80, 100 pounds a week, we do need that efficient. I need a big pressure canner that I can stick a whole bunch of stuff in. And I've got stuff in the pressure canner. I've got stuff in the dehydrator. I have stuff in the freeze dryer. We are utilizing all these preservation methods, which is why you'll see a wide array of the preservation tools that we're using, because we're not just doing one style, right? Because although I like to can my tomatoes in the pressure canner, Nathan cannot stand the taste of canned green beans. And so we freeze all of those, which is where this comes in handy, or we dehydrate them to have them as a snack, which is really nice. And so I will tell you that you're not gonna more than likely just have one way that you're preserving all your food, especially if you like to cook and utilize those foods in different ways like we are. We are major foodies. We're cooking these foods differently. And so preservation is a bit different. But this is a great price point if you are a new gardener, you're just looking to kind of experiment. And another thing to think about too is if you are freezing these and you don't have freezer space, this isn't going to be a good tool. You're going to need something that's, you know, shelf stable that you can put in your pantry. So those are some things to consider. I'm going to tell you guys all the time, get your pen and your notepad out. You got to write this stuff down. Or if you're a phone, computer person, like hats off to you, that's fine too. But it's almost every single season we're sitting down. I buy stacks of notebooks at a time, and they're each designated to different things. And that's what we're talking about is, okay, I'm going to grow this. I want to preserve it this way. What about this? Well, we've never preserved it this way. Maybe let's try that before. And we're constantly trying different things because there may be a new way of preserving things that we've never experienced, and it could totally just change the game for us on that. And so be open-minded on your preservation. Be willing to learn a new skill. For us, I feel like one of our most recent preservations in the last probably 2.5 years has been fermenting. That was a skill that I did not grow up knowing.
Me either.
Yeah, Nathan didn't grow up knowing. It was introduced to us, and it is certainly our most used way of preserving.
I would say so. Only because we learned about the health benefits of fermented foods. And so, yeah, that's, we try to ferment everything. Sometimes it fails.
So if y'all caught last week's video, I fermented some cherry bombs, and then we ended up going out of town. Nathan said I made tomato brandy.
So they're fermented, aren't they? They've got, when you eat them, they've got a little bite to them, you know.
It's like getting a little shot of whiskey every time I eat one. But I'm gonna figure out a way to cook with them. Yeah, so do know, again, it's gonna be trial and error, you guys, but we started off fermenting with this. It's called the Easy Fermenter Starter Kit. We had a wonderful viewer send this to us, and man, we have gotten so much use out of it.
Sure have. Thank you.
It comes with the lids, it comes with the weights, it comes with the pump to just extract all the oxygen out of it. This is great too because you can do small batches. So you can do a pint at a time, a quart at a time. you are going to have to eventually put that in your fridge. So again, figuring out, you know, making sure you have the fridge space for that. But for us, we use this all the time because as we are getting those first few harvests of cucumbers, we can make pickles, or, you know, the first few kohlrabi or carrots or whatever it may be. We can do these kind of small batches, and then eventually we'll be making half-gallon and gallon jugs at a time when we're in the bulk of it.
That's what I love about fermenting too. You can literally ferment anything.
Anything.
And it's good. It's good for you.
Yes.
Know? So.
And it does take on such a different, you know, you could have green beans that you canned, and they're going to be pretty bland, right? I mean, you can season them when you cook them. You can even have green beans that you put in your, you know, you vacuum seal them and you freeze them, and they're going to be a bit crispier, but still a bit dull. Or you could ferment them and make these, you know, little dill beans. And
yeah, you could ferment them using any seasoning you want, really.
Any seasoning. You can make spicy ones. You can make garlic and salty ones. You could make, I saw a recipe for curry ones that you can throw in with your Indian dishes. And so for me, that just elevates the flavor of that. And again, why not have all the options, right? Sometimes you might just want regular old beans to throw in a green bean casserole for Thanksgiving, but then sometimes I want something with a little kick, you know, same with Nathan, and that's when the fermenting would really come in handy. So these are kind of our most used preservation tools on the smaller side. I am going to show you guys our dehydrator, which we've used on and off. I do think it is a great tool at a cheaper price point. If you're wanting the freeze dryer, but you're not quite there yet and you're still kind of experimenting. And I always tell people too, if this is your first year growing a garden, don't invest in all of this yet, right? Because some of us fall in love with the garden, and that's all we think about, and it's all we want to do. And some of us just don't enjoy it like we thought we would, and you just go and you support your local farm, and there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. You do whatever you are called to do. But how devastating if you invested in these pressure canners and a freeze dryer and a dehydrator, and then you realize, I don't like this.
Yeah.
I don't like growing food. I'd rather just support someone else. So one, make sure that this is something you're going to stick with before you go and invest in some of these tools. Now, some of these are cheaper price points, you know, but the dehydrator is going to be a couple $100. You want to make sure that you're getting that use out of it, and it's not just going to sit in a closet somewhere or sit on your counter. And obviously with the freeze dryer, that is an investment that you want to do some calculations and make sure that you're going to get the most out of that that you can.
And if that was you, let me know. I'll make you a deal on your stuff. So.
What are you talking about? Trying to sell my stuff?
No, I'm saying if somebody did go out and invest and they don't want that anymore, and maybe they're wanting to get rid of it now. So
if you're wanting to get rid of the freeze dryer, hook up Nathan. He already wants the large one.
I already want the big one.
He already wants the big one. All right, well, I'm going to take you guys off the tripod, show you what dehydrator we have, which we have had several dehydrators in the past, from the cheapest of the cheapest to what we have now. Does make a difference, but we are very pleased with the one we've been using. Oh, yeah. I've been using it, you know, several times a week, and it's worked great. All right, so our brand of dehydrator is Elect Homes. Now, I have tried to find a link for this before and was not able to, so I'm not sure that they make this exact one. But as you guys can see, it has got several trays. I've got dehydrated cherry tomatoes in there right now. You can dehydrate fruit, vegetables, herbs, meat. It's got different temperatures and times. Like, I absolutely just love this thing. So it does stay on our counter because we are using it quite a bit. And then I would say another thing that isn't probably one of our most used preservation tools, but it is used often. And that is our Ninja. We've got the food processor. So when we are making cauliflower rice, we're putting it in the food processor. When we're making salsa, it's going in the food processor. We make broccoli rice. We'll be making butternut squash rice. And so we will be putting all of this into our food processor. And having a good quality food processor is a game changer. Just recently, this year, did we buy the Ninja, and it's got the blender, the food processor. There was one for like personal smoothies, and then something like there was an attachment where you can make dough too. So that was nice that you kind of had all these different options just kind of in one setup. All right, you guys, those are some of our most used preservation tools. Remember, you do not need a lot to preserve your food. And I would recommend trying a few different ways of preserving over the period of time, but that doesn't mean you have to go out and immediately buy a dehydrator, a pressure canner, a fermenting kit, you know, a vacuum sealer. Not at all. What is the way that you're eating your food the most? Are you going to the store and buying frozen vegetables? Are you going to the store and buying canned vegetables? Once you start evaluating what you're buying and you start realizing, okay, this is how I'm going to eliminate cost and reduce cost in my house by growing this and preserving it myself, then you'll naturally kind of gravitate to the preservation of your style. I know a ton of people who, you know, freeze their produce, and so they are literally blending it down. They're putting them in plastic little ice trays, and then they're taking those and they're just storing those in Ziploc freezer bags, and that is a massive thing that a lot of people do as well. That's a relatively cheap option for preservation. That's not what we do a lot of, but I do know that that is a whole thing. There's actually a really good book. I'm gonna grab it real quick and show you guys if that's a method you're wanting to get into. If maybe you're a beginner and you wanna have a really low cost startup, this would probably be a really good option. All right, so the book is called Freeze Fresh, The Ultimate Guide to Preserving 55 Fruits and Vegetables for Maximum Flavor and Versatility. It's by my friend Crystal over at Whole Fed Homestead. And I've started diving into this more and kind of researching because this book really kind of grabbed my attention. And you can see like how on the back here, she's just freezing all these in various different ways. And so although this isn't our most preferred way of preserving, it is something that I want to spend more time looking into this winter when we have a bit of downtime. And so this is a relatively, it's $20 book, so worth your investment. That's another thing too. Buy books on different ways of preserving, because one, there's always going to be some sort of, you know, special magic in there that you can grab to and learn from and apply it regardless. And so if you were in the beginning stages and you're just thinking about growing a fall garden, or maybe you're just preparing for when you're going to have a garden next spring and summer and you're thinking about ways to preserve, but you have no idea, buy a book on freezing, buy a book on canning, buy a book on fermenting. You'll have a relatively low cost, but then you're going to gain so much knowledge about each ways of preservation that even if you choose to not use that style of preservation, you can still educate and teach and inform other people. So I have this book, even though it's not what I'm using right now, I can tell you guys, hey, this might be a really good resource for you, even though I'm not utilizing everything that's in this book right now. But I could, you know, show you a fermenting book and I'm following majority of those recipes and just things like that. So you're never gonna regret investing in your knowledge. I can promise you that, because then you have the ability to teach and educate other people. And I think that's a really powerful tool. But thank you guys so much for hanging out with me. I hope this was helpful. Like I mentioned, I'm going to try to find the links to everything mentioned. Some of them may not be exact, but what I can find, I'll make sure to put in the description down below. But thank you guys for hanging out with me today. I'll talk to you soon.